morning. As John said, my name is David Roberts, and it's my privilege to be here this morning to be able to give this message on topics that are very important to me. I am a licensed pastor, and I'm also a psychotherapist. And over 20 years, I've worked in both areas of ministry and of mental health. And so these are two areas that I'm very passionate about. So it is my desire this morning that many of you would find hope related to mental health, and would find hope for your loved ones as well. So first, to start off, I want to just ask a simple question: what is mental health, and what does it have to do with spirituality? Basically, mental health is simply a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. Mental health is mental and emotional health. Now, the church as a whole, the church all over the world at times has had a complicated history with mental health. For example, so many people have gone to church and they've found help, they found healing, and this has been a wonderful thing. But at times, some people have also gone to church looking for help, and instead have found rejection, they have felt ignored, or even condemned for their mental health problems. Now, many of these bad experiences often are related to prejudices or misunderstandings related to mental health. For example, one extreme is that in some churches, they see all mental health problems as a result of a fault in that person, or a personal sin, or maybe someone doesn't have enough faith. But another extreme is that mental health issues are completely separate. They have nothing to do with spirituality. Those are problems that should be addressed in a medical setting, in a mental health professional setting, but the church has nothing to help or to give to help a person struggling with their mental health. Now, both of these extremes are incorrect, and a person that is coming to a church looking for help isn't looking for someone to tell them that, to condemn them or to judge them, and they're also not looking for someone to tell them that we can't help you and you need to go somewhere else to find help. Someone that's looking for help is looking for somebody to give them encouragement, to offer to help them find a way, a path for growth, a path to overcome some of the issues that they're dealing with. Now, this morning we're going to take some time to consider a Hebrew word that is found throughout the Christian scriptures. This word is shalom. Now, you might have heard the word shalom before because it's a common Jewish greeting. It means peace. Shalom is translated as peace in our Christian Bibles. It's throughout the Old Testament. The word shalom is used, and we see it as peace. But what that word means is something much richer than peace. It means much more than a superficial feeling of peace. It's more than the absence of conflict or of a problem. Shalom is translated as peace, but it's best described as wholeness or completeness. It expresses a sense of harmony with oneself, with others, with their surroundings, and with God. Now, if we consider times where we may be able to consider times where we've experienced this peace, when we've had that harmony. And if we can remember those times, we can also remember times when we didn't have peace, when it was absent in our lives, in our relationships, in the world. Maybe it's easier to remember times when there wasn't peace. But at times, people try to cover up the absence of shalom or peace by ignoring it. Listen to this description of religious leaders in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 6, verse 14. Here, God, through the prophet Jeremiah, is expressing his concern about how the religious leaders are treating issues of greed and selfishness and oppression amongst God's people. Here it says, they dress the wound of my people as though it were not serious. Peace, peace, they say, when there is no peace. Or shalom, shalom, when there is no shalom. There is no true peace. It is not enough to simply say there is peace when the problem remains. It's not enough to say everything's okay when it's not okay. Or when someone is suffering deeply, just fighting with depression or with debilitating anxiety. True shalom involves a deeper kind of healing that brings a person to wholeness or completeness. For God, true mental health is related to spiritual wholeness in our thoughts and our emotions. Now let's take a deeper look at shalom and what it means, or wholeness, while we consider two of the most common mental health issues in our world today. And those are the problem of depression and anxiety. Just recently, I was looking at some statistics online, and I found a study from the World Health Organization. And recently, they discovered and they published statistics that during the pandemic because of COVID, that anxiety and depression around the whole globe increased 25%. 25% more depression, 25% more anxiety. That doesn't sound like peace. That sounds like suffering. That sounds like pain. And we know that has to do with social isolation. We know that has to do with fears, with loss of loved ones because of COVID and other related issues. But it's a present reality in our world. Depression and anxiety. Now, at times, in some churches, there's an expectation that people should be happy all the time. Sometimes. And sometimes there's an expectation that you should never be afraid because you're a person of faith and you should be a happy person. But if we're honest, that's not our true reality. And if somebody becomes somewhat depressed or they're anxious, sometimes instead of getting help, they hide and they pretend and they ignore. Here's a couple of definitions just so that we're clear on our terms. Depression is a mood or emotional state that is marked by feelings of low self-worth or guilt and a reduced ability to enjoy life. There's low motivation, there's low energy, and sometimes even anger comes out. Anxiety is another common mental health issue. It is defined as an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes like increased blood pressure. People with anxiety disorders usually have recurring intrusive thoughts or concerns. They may avoid certain situations out of worry. So, two basic definitions of depression and of anxiety. But if we're honest, all of us have experienced some level of depression or sadness and some level of anxiety. That is normal. If we suffer the loss of a loved one, we feel sadness and may even lose sleep and our appetite. We also may work so hard and so long that we burn out and have low energy and motivation. Many situations can leave us feeling nervous or anxious, such as public speaking. That's been a big one in my life. Or meeting new people, or preparing for an important project at work or school. It's normal that we have anxiety. However, many of us would probably not meet the requirement for a mental health diagnosis. As humans, we experience these things on a regular basis, but in some cases it becomes more severe, and it begins to interfere with our daily lives. At that point, we're unable to function normally, meet our responsibilities, or enjoy the things people normally enjoy. There's a point when it begins to interfere with our day-to-day living. Now, something very interesting about depression and anxiety is that they are not always bad. This might be a surprise to some people. When functioning well, depression is a way, or sadness, tiredness, and even feeling depressed is a way that our bodies communicate to us that we need to rest and express our thoughts and our emotions that we're holding within. And even anxiety can help in communicating to us that we need to be careful of a certain situation, or that we need to dedicate more time and concentration to a task at hand. So according to the design of God, our bodies are constantly sending us messages that we should pay attention to. At their best, even anxiety and depression can be a friend telling us truth that we need to hear. But at their worst, they can be a terrible enemy and very destructive of our lives. At its worst, depression can completely debilitate a person, sucking the life and joy right out of them, causing them to despair and even consider ending their lives. I think of an example of a friend of mine, a friend that grew up in a home with a father that was struggling with depression. And as he describes his family, he describes his father as home every night, isolated, in silence, not paying attention to my friend and his family. And sometimes he wasn't just silent, sometimes there was anger and rage. But this depression, and he didn't know it was depression at the time, this depression had a huge impact on his family, on his childhood, on this home. And so depression can impact a whole home, a whole family at times. And this is a Christian family. And anxiety can also paralyze a person to the point that they avoid contact with people or even refuse to leave their homes and complete basic tasks because of feeling nervous or uncomfortable. I think of a young man that I worked with at an addictions recovery program. And when I asked him on a scale from 1 to 10 how much anxiety he has, he said 8. I said, sometimes? He said, all the time. 8 out of 10 on anxiety. For him, it was difficult to make a phone call, to find a job, and to do things that are normal for many of us. It was very challenging for him to just deal with day-to-day life. So anxiety and depression are normal, but they also can reach a point where they interfere and they refuse to allow us to live whole, normal lives as God intends for us. So how should we view mental illness in light of a loving God who desires for us to have shalom or wholeness in harmony with our surroundings? There's 3 things this morning that I would like us all to remember regarding mental health, and they're very basic. The first thing is, if you or someone else is struggling with mental health issues, you are not alone. Mental health struggles are common to the human experience. It is clear that we all experience some level of emotional or mental discomfort at times, and negative emotions should be seen as normal and even at times helpful. Our emotions are not wrong in themselves. They're neutral. Some may be painful, they may be uncomfortable, but they communicate to us our response to something that is in fact affecting us. They could be because of a false belief or a false expectation, but they are not the problem always. The feelings are communicating to us. God is even communicating to us. So if you're anxious or depressed, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are lacking faith or you're not spiritual enough. Listen to how Jesus is described in his weakness. In Hebrews 4:15, talking about Jesus, it says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weakness, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin." So even in the life of Jesus, who walked on this earth, he had weakness. He felt difficult emotions. If we read the Bible, we see sadness, we see dread, we see frustration, we see anger, we see him tired, we see him exasperated, frustrated, and we see him even at the point of desiring not to live. That's Jesus. So if we have someone like Jesus that has walked on this earth in human flesh, we have someone that can empathize and understand. We're not alone. And if you have struggles, you're not alone, because many people have the same struggles. And even Jesus, even though he was perfect, he experienced our weakness as well. The second point that I want us to remember is that help is available. You don't have to do it alone. If you struggle or a loved one struggles with mental health, help is available. Mental health issues often require additional help and support. Sometimes these emotions can be so intense and overwhelming that they keep us from living our normal lives. It might be because there's a genetic disposition or a trauma that you've experienced in your life that's caused different symptoms. But this does not mean that you're bad or you're inferior or that you're less than someone else. It's probably not your fault that you are suffering. You may not even have control over your situation. You might be full of faith and still have struggles. It's good to remember that help, if we need some help, it can come from many different people. It can come from a friend. It can come from a leader in a church community like Christ Church. It can come from a professional, like a counselor or a psychologist. And it can come from God. Listen to this passage from 2 Corinthians 12:8-9. The Apostle Paul, it says that the Apostle Paul had a thorn in his flesh, and we don't know what his problem was, but something was tormenting him, whether it was emotional or mental or physical. He had some type of problem bothering him, and he wanted it to be gone. He wanted God to take care of it. But it's very interesting what happened when he prayed. 2 Corinthians 12:8-9 says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. This is a strange response for some of us. He wanted the problem to be taken away. And God said, instead, my grace is going to be enough. I'm going to show my power in giving you victory over this problem, over this thorn in your flesh. So sometimes getting help and finding help from God and finding wholeness doesn't mean that the problem goes away. Sometimes it means that we find the strength and the courage to face it. Sometimes we find peace in the middle of our struggle. Sometimes we find out that we're loved just as we are and not as we think we should be. So the last thing that I want to share, last thing to remember about mental health is that true peace is possible. There is hope for wholeness in the midst of these struggles. There is hope for the person suffering from typical negative emotions and for the one who may actually have a mental health disorder. Wholeness can come by finding help and by recognizing that a loving God is at work making things new in us. This could bring powerful change in our lives or simply give us a path to freedom where our thoughts and feelings no longer cause us the harm that we had before. Anxiety and depression will never completely go away. Sorry to tell you that, because they are part of the human condition. We feel anxious because we're human. Sometimes we get sad and tired because we're human. And it's not any different than what Jesus experienced when he was on earth. Anxiety, it will never go away. However, true healing means that we learn to live in harmony with these feelings and are able to experience the true life of abundance that Jesus offers us. So shalom, or peace, is finding harmony within ourselves. It's finding harmony with others. And it's finding harmony with God. It doesn't mean that we become perfect. It doesn't mean that all our problems are taken away. Instead, it means that we find peace in the midst of those things and we find victory over them. John 10:10, B says, the words of Jesus, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I want to leave all of us this morning with two lists. And these lists are steps for finding help for yourself or for others. I'm not going to explain everything in the list, but the first list is steps for finding hope. And so if you have some struggles with mental health, whether it's depression or sadness or anxiety, these are steps that you can take to find hope, recognizing your thoughts and feelings and how they are affecting your life. Speaking with a trusted person about what you are experiencing. Choosing to believe that things could improve and deciding to make changes. Seeking support and resources to begin the change process. Beginning to make changes towards wholeness, not perfection. Those are steps for finding help, but you might say, I have a loved one that needs help. I'm worried about this family member, this brother or sister. And so there's steps for helping others. They are listen to their story and empathize with their experience without judging. Plant a seed of hope by sharing how they can seek help. Offer to accompany them in the journey towards wholeness. When they decide to seek help, walk alongside them and offer your support. And encourage them while they are in this process of change. So these are some basic steps. There's steps you can take for yourself. There's steps that you can take to help someone else and to offer them help. This is just the first of 3 talks about mental health. And this is an introduction. The title is called Finding Help. Next week, Peter Stegels is going to speak on finding, this is on finding hope. His talk will be on finding help. And the last message will be on finding healing. And so if this is really resonating with you, if this message is really pertinent and a relevant topic to you, we encourage you to come back and to continue to have conversations about this and to learn more. We think that it's going to be a really important series during these 3 weeks. As part of the pastoral team here at Christ Church, I want to let everyone know that we've thought very intentionally about this. And we don't want to just give 3 talks. We want to let people know that you can find help here. That you can talk to somebody from the pastoral team about an issue that you have yourself or someone else. It might mean that we offer some counseling. It might mean that you become a bigger part of this community. And if we feel like that it's beyond our scope or beyond our expertise, we will make sure that you find the resources or the professional help that you need. But we are here and we are happy to help walk alongside you with the struggles that you might have, you or your loved ones. So just to close, and here in a moment I'll close in prayer. May you and your loved ones find wholeness today within yourself, with others, and with a good and loving God.